Seeby Woodhouse made his fortune at the age of 29 when he sold Orcon to Cordia for $25 million. His ventures since then include carbon emission trading, commercial property investment, founding a new ISP called Voyager, and there's a lot of travel in there. And more recently, the sponsor of New Zealand's largest media awards. Seeby joins me now. Welcome. So $25 million, how long ago was that?
11 years ago.
So what would the adjusted figure of that be now?
Probably 35 million, something like that, in today's money.
Because it's 11 years ago, that yes, it was a lot of money, and 35 million is a lot of money today, but you've still got to be pretty sensible about what you do with it, don't you?
Yeah, well, I started Orcon at about 19 and sold it at 29, so it was almost exactly 10 years. And the whole time that I'd run Orcon, it was kind of in a non-profit situation because I was going for growth and capital gain. We don't have capital gains tax in New Zealand, so sort of had that plan. And so essentially I was living on, Wheat Bix and baked beans and living in a tiny little, 2-bedroom house and, didn't have a housekeeper or any sort of luxuries. And then all of a sudden I had, $20 million in the bank or more. And so I kind of thought, I'm set for life. That's the figure that's big enough. So when Cordia came along with a cheque that was big enough, I sort of thought, yeah, that's the amount that I never need to work again. And I kind of had in the back of my head that I didn't want to be one of these people that, like Warren Buffett, that works every single day of his life from dawn till dusk and then just dies with, $80 billion in the bank. I thought I want to, make a lot of money young and then enjoy my life and have, real balance. And things like Ferraris and holidays and all that kind of thing are so much more enjoyable when you're mobile and energetic. So that was kind of the plan. And then I timed the sale perfectly. I think I ran the business perfectly. And so I sold in 2007, had the money in the bank, and then I didn't really know what to do with it. And we'd had a long run of sort of successful markets, and everyone was kind of saying, economists have cracked the code where, things are going to be stable forever. And so I bought a big, $10 million party house that was well known as the New Zealand's Next Top Model mansion and the MasterChef mansion, and, kind of had events there and all of that kind of thing. So spent half of my fortune in one go on that house. And then I had another couple of properties, one a beach house and a farm and things. So I ended up spending like $18 million on property in 3 weeks. So I had $21 million in the bank, and then all of a sudden I had not that much left, but I wasn't too fast. And then 3 weeks after I spent all the money, the recession started coming in, and the newspapers started saying, things aren't looking good. And then I had a couple of settlements that I had to make, and of course when you have money, people start coming after you for historical things. So then that got a little bit tough, and all of a sudden I didn't have much cash, and all I had was residential property. So I ended up losing about $4 or $5 million, taking a hit on some of the properties and keeping the big house. And then I put that money into commercial property and bought right at the low end of the market, and actually did really well. I've got 3 commercial office buildings which have done really, really well because they were bought in sort of 2009, 2010. And one I bought for $4.5 million has now got a valuation of 10 to 11. So that was, kind of good. But I did take a hit, and I guess being good in business at one thing doesn't mean that you have any life experience to know what to do in another. So I kind of got a bit of a spanking and grew up a little bit, and realised, not trying to sound big-headed, but actually $20 million doesn't actually go that far. So, I kind of thought that I'd be set for life and, flying helicopters and, on private yachts and, Greece and that kind of thing. And, that's actually a whole nother game. You need to sort of be in the $100 million, kind of level for that to happen. But I'm very lucky and fortunate and happy that I made money when I did. But I kind of sacrificed my 20s. So I basically worked 16 hours a day, 7 days a week through my 20s. I didn't party like any of my friends. And so my 30s ended up being that kind of, fun, having, travel, party kind of thing. But I regret nothing. I've had a blessed life and done really well for myself. So
a couple of things come to mind. Firstly, as you were living, meager means, building the business, where did the capital come from?
Well, I didn't actually
capital.
have any capital. So the Wood brothers, Tim and Nick, who are friends, started a little bit before me, maybe 6 months to a year before me, and I think they had a $10,000 loan from their dad, and then they turned that into $100 million pretty quickly, or $80 million. And I had no money, and in fact, my dad was kind of pissed off initially that I decided to drop out of university.
Because mum and dad were librarians, weren't they?
Yeah, sort of. Focused on that kind of, learning and higher education, all that kind of thing. But I knew that if I didn't get into the internet business, then 4 years later it would be too late. So I dropped out of university, and how I started was basically just reselling internet plans from other internet companies. So there was a company called SignSurf, and I resold from iHug, and then I kind of would pay the internet bills from from companies, and then I would just re-invoice to my customers. And then once I got to sort of 100 odd customers with an Excel spreadsheet of who I was billing and the margins, then I could kind of beat up the providers that I was wholesaling from and say, well, I've got 100 accounts, I want a much better price. And then I got my own phone number so that I could move, in the days of dial-up, I could move that phone number around between providers and had a list of all the usernames and passwords of my customers. And then I started doing deals where I'd had, 800 customers, and I'd move them from provider A to provider B. And then once I had enough margin, I started hiring, a help desk person. And I didn't actually know anything about the internet. I wasn't good at computers. I didn't have a computer education. I was purely in it for the business opportunity. I saw the business opportunity. I saw the internet was going to be big, and kind of got in it by wheeling and dealing, hook or by crook. Just every single day I'd be like, how can I be involved in this industry? And then eventually, once I got enough margin, I started hiring my own technical people. So for 10 years, it was kind of a process of elimination, where in year one I did everything, and then in year two I did everything except answer the phone and had 2 staff, and then in year 3 I did everything except answer the phone and run the website, and then in year 4 I did everything except answer the phone, run the website and do the finances. And then my job kind of got smaller and smaller and smaller and more CEO-y. And in fact, the actual sale process to Kordia took over a year. So for more than 10% of the entire life of the business, I was selling the business. So yeah, it was a real journey, but I what made me actually want to make money, and what should have prevented me from losing money in the 2007 crash, although quite a lot of smart people did, was that my parents lost a lot of money, or almost everything, in the 1987 Black Tuesday crash. And so at that time, I kind of, when you're small, when you're young, you kind of, until you're a teenager, you think of your parents as the smartest people in the room. And then, of course, once you're a teenager, you start questioning that. But when I was 11 and my parents lost everything, and I'm thinking I've got 2 librarian parents, I sort of thought, well, okay, I thought they were really, really clever about everything. And I had this kind of question of, well, there's clearly more clever people. And I think it was Bob Jones or something that was in the paper and said, oh, of course, everyone knew that this was going to happen, and I'm on my yacht and I've protected myself. And I was thinking, oh, I need to be a business person. So I read, Jones on property, and got stuck into business books. So from 11 to the time that I started Orcon, I read at least a couple of hundred, maybe more, like 400 business books, and started with, Think and Grow Rich, which is the ultimate classic, was the precursor to, Tony Robbins' big success. If you go do a Tony Robbins course, actually a lot of stuff in there is actually from Think and Grow Rich. It's the ultimate, classic on, mind over matter and thinking, and then How to Win Friends and Influence People. And all of those great classics. And then I got a book on for my 15th birthday. People started seeing that I was interested in business, and I got a book which was the Forbes 400, and it was 400 pages with a page on each. And I noticed that a lot of these men and women were self-made. There was probably 2/3 that were self-made and 1/3, and that gave me the kind of belief that you could come from nothing, which I had. My parents were educated but not wealthy, very blue collar. And I had to buy my own bicycle at school, and had to save up paper run money and all that kind of thing. So I felt like there was a feeling of lack, and that feeling of lack and loss in 87 kind of gave me the desire to really push ahead. So, there's that saying, 3 generations, rags to riches and back again. And it's kind of oftentimes when you feel like you have lack, you get that real motivation to succeed. And then your children are kind of spoilt brats and they go to private school and then they spend all their money on holidays and then lose the family fortune and then the cycle continues. So it doesn't always work out that way. But I'm kind of grateful for the fact that I got a steam load of motivation to go and make something of myself instead of just kind of feeling like I was going to do the normal university route and become a professional person or something.
So when you pretty much used up all the return on your investment, did you kind of freak out as to what am I going to do now to generate a cash flow? Obviously you'd be under sort of restraint to prevent yourself from going back and doing what you knew, but that's all you'd done since sort of leaving school. I mean, that was your thing. You can't go back and do that. You've got no money coming in. What do you do now?
So you're talking about post-Orcon, I did have a ton of money in the bank at the end of the day, and I was living in this beautiful house. But you'd sort of
depleted that, hadn't you?
I had depleted it, but not completely.
Right.
And of course, you can borrow.
That house must have cost a fortune to run and maintain.
Yeah, the maintenance and rates were over $150,000 a year, and I had it a long time. So I ended up having that house for 10 years, and I guess my restraint of trade with Cordia was only 3 years, but I didn't end up starting Voyager for 6 years. So it wasn't like I was kind of dying to get back in. And I obviously dabbled in, carbon credits, and then got disillusioned with them as not, necessarily good for the planet, which is why I kind of got into them in the first place, not necessarily to make money. And, dabbled in commercial property, but of course, I think I did pretty well in commercial property at the end of the day, and I'm a landlord, and I love my buildings because you can see and touch them, and they're this real thing. But I'm at a 15-20 year disadvantage from the commercial property guys that have been doing it for 20 years and have a network of contacts and things. And so I actually was an Orcon customer, and the thing that kind of pushed me over the edge was waiting on the phone and seeing the customer service had gone downhill a little bit, and then being treated as kind of a customer and passed to a call centre in Manila or whatever when they outsourced their call centre. And then I was thinking, oh, this is ridiculous. And so kind of decided that I would get back into the business. And I also, kind of saw the emergence of cloud technology. So, when Voyager was started, cloud was kind of still a term people didn't really understand, and thought I'd take advantage of that. So it was Voyager's a slightly different beast from Orcon. It's not kind of the same thing, but similar. And it would be a shame to throw away 10 years of really good telco experience because I can do things that some people can't do. There's a lot of people that don't understand how to run a provider, and all of that's locked up in my head. So why not use it?
So in September last year, you told NBR that Voyager's annual revenue had hit 30 million, and that you were shooting for 100 million. How are you going with that goal?
Still on track, not markedly increased on 30. So we did Actrix, which was close to 10 million turnover as an acquisition, and that got us closer. And then we did Conversant, which was $1 million or so. But this year's really been a process of consolidation, and since Voyager was started, we bought 10 different companies. So First Domains registers 20% of all the domain names in New Zealand. So 1 in 5 businesses in New Zealand is already a customer of ours under the First Domains brand, and then we host maybe 20% of New Zealand's websites through Net24. And we had some voice over IP providers. But telco billing is incredibly complicated, maybe the most complicated billing kind of thing. So, if you're a traditional business, maybe installing air conditioning, you do some work, you send someone a $3,000 invoice that maybe has one line item, and you get your office girl to do it. With telco, it has to be automated. Sometimes it has to be real time. Sometimes you have to put a toll bar on. You might have to have a particular thing, and you might send someone a bill for $3.50, and it might have 100 line items of it for itemized 2 cents calls and things. And so there's a real level of sophistication in terms of automation, pre-billing and things. And so we just hadn't got that quite right yet, but we've finally got a billing system in and running and working, and it's just being the final stages of being deployed, and I think it will give us a real edge. And so all of those business units are now being consolidated into the core, and so we haven't been able to sell Voyager broadband to First Domains customers, but very soon we will. So there's all of this cross-selling that we'll be able to do, and I think that'll be a big revenue upswing, because we have 35,000 odd customers that we send a monthly invoice to, but they're under 10 different brands, and oftentimes, one customer can't buy a service from another, or we don't push it. So, I think the good stuff's really, really, really coming. So my strategic plan that I've been trying to execute on is about 3 years late, as happens, but we're getting there, and we've got some really good products, and I'm really proud of our cloud PABX telephony product, which we have 15,000 IP telephones on and about 5,000 customers. So we have basically it's a giant big phone system in the cloud, and instead of being partitioned for every single customer, it's kind of like a centralized system, a little bit like Skype, but tailored for the New Zealand market. And we've built that ourselves and own all the code and everything. So if you're a business and you want a voice over IP telephony system, you might go to Mitel or Broadsoft or Cisco, but then there's all these licensing fees of $8 a user and this much a phone and this kind of thing. So we don't have any of that because we own the system. So we're doing quite well in terms of wholesaling our cloud telephony products to other providers, wholesale customers, and retail businesses. And that's a lot better margin for us than just standard broadband. So New Zealand's actually got really good infrastructure. We've got fantastic access to most of the country, can get gigabit fibre at really achievable, at really affordable speeds, but the margins in that have been pummeled down to 5%, 1%. It's kind of supermarket type rates. So it's hard as a small provider to survive on that. And so Voyager has all these ancillary things and specialised voice services and cloud telephony and all those kind of things help us to survive as a small player in a busy market.
Let's talk about you personally. You've had a roller coaster ride since selling up the business. I've followed your Instagram. You've travelled extensively. You got married and that fell over pretty quickly. You've had ill health. Tell me a little bit about, is that part of the whole coming into money when you weren't used to it and acting like a kid in your 30s when you ordinarily do it in your 20s?
Unfortunately, it's just a fact of life that our bodies start falling apart as you get older. And that skateboarding accident that you had when you were 18 that didn't seem to bother you, all of a sudden your knee starts having that phantom pain and that kind of thing. But yeah, I have had a couple of sort of accidents or whatever that made me take stock. And probably the thing that bothers me the most is I always had really, really good hearing, and then I ended up basically being in a very low state with the separation of my wife, which was, to be honest, my fault. She's a lovely human being, and
it wasn't long, was it? I mean, that was because it was such a beautiful. I wasn't there, I wasn't invited, but I felt like I was there with your photos. It was a magnificent occasion.
Yeah, it was $100,000 of flowers, and it was in Queenstown, and the wedding cost $400,000, and the total cost was probably more like $600,000, and she was the perfect bride and everything. But I think I went through a process of, is this, I've arrived and everything's perfect. Is this all there is? And I think that probably the lesson that I've learned over the couple of years, and I've done a massive amount of growing, and I've done, I have a kind of spiritual guru who's the head of the Kundalini Global Association, who's a personal friend who I met in India, and I actually spent a year following Tony Robbins around. So I did 16 Tony Robbins courses in 1 year and sort of went through this whole growth point. But I think some people never learn this lesson, and the lesson that I've learned over the last couple of years, and the lesson that I've learnt through the hardship of divorce and through some health problems, and I have pretty poor hearing now. I'm almost deaf in one ear through a viral infection, and I have a lot of hearing loss in the other ear, so I struggle. If it's one-on-one, that's fine, but if I'm in a bar, I really can't hear anyone. So all of those things have been kind of an emotional burden, but what I've realised is that happiness comes from within, it doesn't come from without. So most people, go around life trying to find something outside of them to make them happy. And if you're not happy on the inside, it doesn't matter. And so that's why you can have, billionaires that are completely miserable and their families hate them and they, have this awful life. And you can have homeless people that are happy. So, money isn't necessarily tied to happiness. In fact, it can be inversely correlated because, you might not know who your friends are or those kind of things. So the learnings of, spiritual practice and meditation and, yoga and Tony Robbins' teaching and all those kind of things. I've had this incredible experience of being able to generate happiness every day and not allowing the outside world to come in and influence my mental state, which is a real gift. So despite any challenges, feel blessed.
I'm not calling you out, but would it be fair to say that there was some substance abuse during all that partying?
No, I think it was just normal partying that people do.
What's normal?
Well, drinking too much, and at my 35th birthday party, I went through 200 bottles of Verve in about 3 or 4 hours with my I had a party at my house, and so probably the most infamous picture from my 35th birthday was I had an entire rubbish skip that was one of those ones that has to be picked up with a crane that was full of Verve bottles. So those kind of excesses, yeah.
Do you still drink today?
No, not really. I mean, the occasional glass of red wine, but not really. So I have a bit of a heart condition as well, so that's kind of made me appreciate life a lot more.
Seeby Woodhouse, owner of Voyager, thank you so much for your time, and thank you for watching. It was most insightful. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. Please do feel free to engage with comments down below. Catch you next time.